And that is what the Brexit vote was premised on. And this is what explains Theresa May's absolutism when she stands up in Parliament. She literally cannot countenance any kind of compromise. It's Brexit, Brexit, Brexit. There's nothing else in the brain there. Because she's been brainwashed, whether she realises it or not, by this extremist political dualist tradition. I don't think she's a bad person. I don't think she actually realises the background of what I'm talking about. Most people don't. They've not done the homework. I met Theresa May when I was teaching at a girls' private educational school in Wiltshire. She came to give a philosophy talk to the sixth form, and we had a chat, and I thought she was reasonably intelligent. But I say reasonably. I can tell that she has no training in metaphysics and the stuff I'm talking about, no real understanding of the spiritual dynamics behind history, and doesn't understand, and therefore has committed some very fatal errors. Because that wing of the Tory party is about political dualism. It's we are right. So the more Corbyn jumps up and says, no, you're wrong, she loves it because she can say, look, we're right. So it becomes this whole dualistic charade, which isn't solving anything. So moving on then, I've explained some of the problems. This is the deep history underlying Brexit. It's a deep mess we're in here. And I want to now move on to something a bit more positive, which is what is the solution? How do we get out of this chaos that we're in, right? Well, let's go back to absolute basics. Let's start again with what we're doing here at Incarnation. Why are we here as human beings, right? I don't know about you, but I'm on a path to enlightenment. I think the contract that all of us made when we came into Incarnation and were born was the delight in being human, the amazing experiences it gives us all, but ultimately the cultivation of knowledge and wisdom and enlightenment is the goal. I mean, you can be good at, you can have, explore the senses and all the great things that are open up there, but far better than that is learning and wisdom. And that's what all the sacred texts, we're in a room surrounded by sacred texts, that's what they all say. The Bible, Proverbs says, you can enjoy the wine, but put it down eventually because you've got to turn to wisdom. And so if we start from that we need to cultivate a will to enlightenment within each of us, whatever our religious background. And remember the basic ethics and practices. They're all something about mindfulness, whether it's a Christian prayer ceremony or an Islamic tradition or Sufi or Zoroastrian or anything, or Buddhist. They're about cultivating a greater perspective, a greater vision. And therefore let's refocus our transpersonal will on enlightenment, both individually but also collectively. And this is what I call meta-Mahayana practice. Meta-Mahayana is the idea that each path, each nation has a journey through to enlightenment from its own perspective. And I see each nation, if you want, as like a bodhisattva in a great assembly hall of beings. And they're all different. So the Irish sage, the Irish seer, a druid or whatever, or Christian druid, will have their own unique history and text to bring to the party. The person in Sri Lanka, or in India, or in Tibet, or in Bhutan, or in France, or Spain, whatever, they all have their own spiritual journeys and practices. And what I'm arguing is there need be no rivalry between them. Right? There need be no war. If we learn to reread the sacred texts in peace and to practice them from the standpoint of enlightenment, we have to fast forward to the future when there's planetary enlightenment, and then come back to where we are now. And you can do this with visualization practices and workshop techniques and things. What would the world look like? What would money look like? What would transport look like? What would employment look like? What would human rights look like? From the perspective of planetary enlightenment. That's where I'm coming from. And I think, having done that exercise many times and talked to many enlightened people in my life so far, I think it would be definitely a planet of peace. I don't think we'd be roving and we'd have these huge stockpiles of military weapons and armies roaming around. It will be a planet in which the needs of everybody would be taken care of up to the basic survival level. That there's nobody living in psychological angst as to where their next meal or home is going to come from. I'm listening to Das Kapital again as a mental exercise in honour of my mother, who was a Marxist, all the way through as a discipline. It's taken me about 3 months. And much as I respect Marx's work, what he never mentioned, and what is so crucial, is the psychological angst of poverty. Capital, he says, look, the problem with capital is being accumulated in fewer and fewer hands, and the vast mass of people don't have enough money. Well, that's true. And he then comes up with a formula of how to resolve that. What he doesn't talk about is the psychological impact of being poor. People who literally don't know where they're going. I've just come from the tube here in London, and there are people like homeless, sitting by the tube all night, waiting for a few coins. I mean, that shouldn't be happening. And in an enlightened society, it wouldn't. So, the implication is that planetary enlightened society would be some kind of social democracy, as well as a political democracy. There would be social provision for poverty and so on. And in fact, I think, I'm going to suggest that it would be something like the European Union. It would be easier to tweak the European Union and fine-tune its structures, which are caring for the environment, caring for human rights, caring for poverty alleviation, by giving funds to the worst deprived parts of Europe and so on. We can work, I think, with bodies like the European Union to fine-tune it and get it up to a kind of planetary enlightenment stage, more than we can with a sort of semi-feudalistic system, as seems to be being promoted by the Tory party, kind of neo-nationalist, neo-racist feudalism, where it's rule Britannia and get more submarines and bombs going, and the answer is, sell weapons to dictatorial regimes and do deals with corrupt tyrants. I mean, that's surely a retrograde move from the perspective that I'm proposing we come from, which is the will towards planetary enlightenment, individual and collective. Okay. Right, so another thing to say about this, the journey to enlightenment, if you read any of the texts, and there are many esoteric texts here in the Theosophical movement, generally the anthroposophical movement, all of them, and in the Buddhist literature and so on, the one thing they always warn about on the spiritual path is to avoid of the danger of siddhis. Now, siddhis are paranormal powers. They're mentioned in the Druid literature and the Christian literature, the temptations of the saints. The temptation is always to misuse the power you accumulate for your personal ego advantage, rather than the collective. And all Buddha said, look, when you seriously practice spirituality, when you start ahimsa and non-violence, you will find incredible powers come to you, like clairaudience. You'll be able to hear thoughts at a distance, clairvoyance. You'll be able to see the future, the past. But what you mustn't do is get trapped in those siddhis, those powers. You must remember your will to enlightenment and put everything at the service of that collective enlightenment experience. That's the point of the Lotus Sutra, which is the most famous of all the Buddhist sutras, when individual bodhisattvas reaffirm their vows to collective enlightenment of the totality of beings, right? Not just selfishly for me and my family, or me and my sect, or me and my group. Now, it seems to me, looking at, from a transpersonal historical perspective, the political debates around Brexit, it seems to me the Brexiteers are like a demonic force that have offered the British people siddhis. They're like asuras that have appeared saying, here, follow us, we're Brexiteers, we'll give you power back, we'll give you much more rights, we'll kick out all those people you don't like, those Poles and those horrible Romanians, we'll emphasise your brilliant race, you're the best. And we'll make trade appear. Trade will start with Malaysia and all over the world. Suddenly there'll be convoys coming into the Thames. These are demonic temptations. Like, it's not going to happen, but even the fantasy is a kind of siddhi. It's a fake fantasy that's been sold in a demonic way. which has appealed to the lowest and the worst egos of the masses, collectively. Unfortunately, the educational level of the masses in most countries is not as high as one would like, and in Britain, because of the class-based nature of our education system, I've taught at all levels of the educational systems, in schools, you know, for the elites, in schools for the poor, and so on. And the education is not a provision that makes people equipped with the ability to sort out ethical choices very easily. Right and wrong have become blurred. They're fed a kind of relativistic, secularist, scientistic-based knowledge system in the mass schools, where there is no difference really between right and wrong. There's only power and the self-advancement. That, unfortunately, too often has become the mantra. And I've tried to combat that as a teacher of religious studies, obviously, but I think it's a race to get the knowledge of actually the soul is important, it exists, and it's your ethical choices that are going to determine your future. For the masses, that's a meaningless kind of approach. You know, it's just about power. And unfortunately, those people have bought the Brexit demon argument, because it's an appeal to more power. Well, we'll get our power back, we'll get our rights back. You know, that's the mantra. We never gave up the power. We never gave up the sovereignty. It was just shared on a basis of love. And so we've been fed this kind of demonic temptation. Well, what do? What the Bodhisattva does, what this genuine disciple does, and we have to, each one of us individually in Britain has to make this choice. We have to face down the demons, the temptations. What Buddha did, he himself was subject to this. On the night before enlightenment, Mara, who's their kind of devil figure, fired all these firing arrows at him. He's sitting there. Now, you can interpret this Jungian-wise, that these were thoughts. He was thinking, oh God, I was terrible to my wife. I abandoned her. I'm a hopeless person. I should hang myself from that tree, you know, type of thoughts. Well, those are the arrows. But he turned them all into flowers. He turned them into flowers and transformed those negativities. So we have to do the same with the Brexit demons. You see, because I've studied comparative diabology, and I've just been researching the Cathar history and organised a conference on Mary Magdalene a couple of years running. We've looked at the Cathar wars in detail, and I've been interested in the whole history of you know, the devil in history and in images, which is, as a political, philosophical monist, I think is a false idea. It's always there in black magic. The tradition of the black magician is the one that misuses their cities or powers for personal advantage. They do a pact with the devil, say Faust. You know, they literally sell their soul for these powers. And to me, that's the sign of a black magician. Now that's what's on offer, as far as I can tell, from Brexit. It's you know, it's cleverly packaged, disguised, but it's a battle dreamed up by fallen magicians or fallen angels. And in the Book of Enoch, we have this tradition of the Watchers coming down to the earth, are fallen angels who come down to earth, cavort with women and try and take over the earth and pervert it to its diabolic, you know, pleasure ground of fallen angels. Enoch sees them off. There is a tradition, you know, of righteous sages. Noah, his grandson, again, saves the fallen humanity after, because the flood comes. God cleanses the earth. And so who can oppose these fallen magicians that are behind Brexit is the question you have to look at. Well, I think this is what our ancestors back in the 1870s were asking, because it was tough then too. There were wars going on. Nobody knew who's right, the nationalists, the internationalists, you know, it was chaos. So that's why they founded the Theosophical Society and other groups like it. And they came up with this idea, well, there's got to be some kind of hidden hierarchy behind history, the invisible masters, the Mahatmas. and Blavatsky and some of her inner coterie felt they were in touch with them. These were great saints, realised ascended beings, humans, but who'd worked on themselves for many lifetimes and reached places of omniscient clairvoyance and wisdom, so they could help guide others. And I think they do exist. There are such big people. I mean, there are gurus in India today, and I've met some of them, very advanced souls from all different religions. Those are the spiritual hierarchy, if you want, who think universally and internationally. They're not interested in your colour, your creed, your race, your class, the true ones. They're true universalists. And that would be the tradition of what I call white magic. Alice Bailey was an earlier seer who worked in this field, and she wrote a book, Treatise on White Magic. She tried to explain the thinking that you need to be an aspirant for those kind of lodges. And she knew Jung, she was a friend of Jung, and they had mutual friends in common in Switzerland. So there are these inner theosophical masters behind history. One of the most famous that's often mentioned is the Comte de Saint-Germain, who's a figure that occurs again and again in these things. Now he's interesting, I've discovered, because Saint-Germain is where the Jacobite court was of the Stuart monarchs outside Paris. There's this amazing place called Saint-Germain, which I went to. It's a huge castle-type palace that was given by the French king to James II after he lost the Battle of the Boyne. James was actually quite a deep man, a deep thinker, and he unfortunately became Catholic at a time when it was quite fanatically anti-papist in extreme Protestant circles for political and economic reasons more than anything. He really should have, I think, probably retired, given up the monarchy and gone and become a monk. He would have been happy. But he stayed on being a king, and he had a court in Saint-Germain. And the Comte de Saint-Germain was one of the members of that court who knew him and used to come. Now, he was an internationalist. He was Hungarian, French, he was a diplomat, he travelled to London, Horace Walpole met him. He was involved with the American revolutionaries, they met him. He saw the bigger picture. Now, I think that those kinds of people would be in support of the Union of European Nations that we've got. The Union of European Nations is the culmination of the attempt by the hierarchy to bring these incredible peoples of Europe into some kind of symbiotic peace relationship held, because nationalism was a chaos. I mean, nationalism itself is quite a good idea, and for instance, in the Irish tradition, Maud Gonne was a great Irish nationalist, and it wasn't necessarily always a bad thing. It has a good element. In Italy, Italian nationalism under Mazzini had a progressive thing, which inspired people like Beethoven to write Fidelio. But when it's taken to an absolute, it becomes dangerous. I mean, the same with Israeli nationalism. Zionism at the beginning was a great idea, it was lovely, it was utopian socialist. When it's taken to an absolute extreme, we're the only good guys in history, and you're Palestinians, you're bad, we're going to rub you out. Then it becomes an extremist force. So therefore, mediating between rival nationalisms, such as the European Union does, is an incredibly important project for the hierarchy, I would argue. And I've met people who are working for and with the European Union and different European countries who are very profound white magicians. And I'm appealing really to my friends here in Britain, to not listen to these dark Steve Bannon types who are beguiling them with this ridiculous rhetoric of destructive political dualism. Okay, so I think we'll stop there for a little break, and then we'll carry on later. Okay, thank you.